This an all-out blitz, real hard hits, them other podcast trash, we gon' make them all quit. We cover all the topics with intelligence and logic. I know you wanna score, but ID gon' stop it. We from Texas, so that mean that we Texans. Breaking down the X's and O's, our profession. No complaining, just training, you see the progression. They had a Pro Bowl for talk shows, we get selected. We gon' celebrate every win like a birthday. Ray J with the news, first with all the updates. Spin move on the competition, yeah, we juking them. You not really in touch if you not tuning in. This is Crenshaw, Briggs, and VT. We want the touchdown, we not trying to go for 3. And it's best if you get up out the street, cause them bulls out the pen and they bout to stampede.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Texans Fan Battle Podcast, hosted by the Fan Battle Sports Network. I'm your host today, Matthew Briggs. We got a special guest in the building, but before I introduce him, let me introduce you my amazing trio. First off, I got my A1 since day one, Mr. Crenshaw. How you doing?
Good evening.
And then we got Mr. VT. What's going on, bud?
What's going on, guys?
Guys, if y'all read Houston sports, you know this guy very, very well. We got Mr. Brooks Kubena. How you doing, man?
Doing great, guys. Happy to be on with you guys. And see, VT's got how much of the Texan stuff you got in that room, man?
Not enough.
Not enough.
Looks like you walked into NRG's shop and then just took the whole place.
Yeah.
Did you make use of the number 4 trade-in?
No, I did not, because you have to. I actually live in Florida, and you had to be in Houston at the team shop. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to. I still have 2 of his jerseys just rotten away that I'll never put on ever again in my life.
All right.
Hey, just cut it up and use it toilet paper. I mean, save us some money. You know?
Just don't want to clog my sewer system.
Right.
Look,
well, Brooks, how you feel like breaking down some NFL news with us? Sound good?
Let's do it, man. We were hitting the summer. Now we're hitting the dog days. We got plenty of stuff to talk about over this off season. So whatever you guys want, let's shoot.
So me and Brooks and BT are patiently waiting for Crenshaw's, slowness coming on the show. We kind of talked a little about it. Breaking story: there is a player that has not been named yet. Has lost $8 million. Me and Brooks thought he lost $8 million to a bet, but obviously it's through fines and suspensions and whatnot. So Brooks, I kind of kick it off to you. What does that mean to the NFL? Like, are they going to crack down harder on betting, or what's the deal?
Well, you definitely don't want to be in a situation as a league where you have players betting in precarious situations, like prop bets of themselves or the games in which they play in, ending up in Pete Rose type situations. But you're also entering into some pretty big gray area where the NFL is also embracing sports gambling, which is legal in the United States now. So you also are seeing a big influx of money in the NFL with partners. A lot of casinos. The Texans even have partnerships with a casino now. So if you're starting to crack down on players who have a lot of money to spend, your partners that are giving you a lot of money to the league are not going to be very happy if you start cracking down on some of their income and revenue. So it's going to be a really interesting situation, a bit of a Wild West. I think of it whenever I covered college football. Whenever the NIL happened, you start to see how things change with rules that you don't even have yet and laws that are changing. So this is a situation the NFL is now having to deal with, and starting to see a lot of players enter some situations. And we were talking about before the show, some of these seem really, really strenuous and really maybe unfair. Like Jamison Williams, first off, we can just say what the rule is, because we broke it down beforehand just to say it. Like in the NFL says that you can't gamble from from engaging in any form of gambling in any club or league facility or venue, including the practice facility. But they can gamble on sports other than football. Jameson Williams was in a hotel that the team paid for. Y'all pointed that out to me. That just seems like, a little bit too far reaching. He's not in his work environment. He just happens to be on an off-site spot that his employer paid for. And if he had paid for it himself, he'd be fine. So you look at that and you're like, okay, what's the deal here? So now I'm losing 6 games. And if you're suspended for 6 games, that's 6 game checks of your base salary. So that's a big chunk of money.
And look, two players got cut because of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're probably in the same boat as Jim Williams. So, I mean, people are losing their career over it now. That's something you got to take in mind of and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. So we were at training. We're at a mandatory minicamp today, and we were talking to the players today, and just hearing from them and asking them what they would do, and they just said flat out, like, don't gamble. There are some players who are going to take that view of it. They just say, you know what, I'm not going to enter into anything that could endanger me. And already, I mean, you have players that are signing contracts and going into training camp, battling for jobs, not knowing if they'll end up getting paid anyway. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where a team has any reason to cut you. I think the larger issue is going to be some of these players getting big time contracts and they have all this money to spend and they feel a little bit more safe on the teams of which that are giving them guaranteed money. I think those are maybe some of the ones that like Jameson Williams, right? Like a big time first round pick, had a lot of money to spend. So there's going to be a lot of education programs going through this, I think, but definitely something to monitor over the years to come.
Well, I mean, you got people like, I don't want to say people, but, you got incidents like Henry Ruggs and so forth, so on. I mean, would you rather them doing that or gamble? I mean, you kind of got to pick your poison, right? I mean, do you want them being wild now or you want them being at the hotel room staying out of trouble and gambling? So,
So you're making a case that gambling keeps people indoors.
I'm just saying.
You know what? We might have something there. I think that might look good on a LeBurge billboard. Stay indoors, gamble.
Yeah, right. You got to pick your poison somehow.
If you stay at home, if you go to the bar, you can. I can see that on any kind of liquor commercial. You buy liquor and you bring it home. You can stay at home.
Look, DraftKings, I just sold all your problems right there. That's the way to get it, right? Stay out of trouble and bet. I make millions.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, BT, what do you think, bro?
Yeah, I think I understand why they have to crack down on this because they don't want the impression of any sort of impropriety now that they are having partnerships with all these gambling companies. The problem with it is that you have to also train, especially these rookies, what is allowed and what's not allowed. You can't simply just put it in a 700-page booklet from the NFLPA and expect them to understand all the intricacies of what they can and cannot do when it comes to gambling. The NFL themselves is promoting it. These are young guys that are millionaires in their 20s that are millionaires, many of them for the first time. Not all of them got NIL deals. And so when they're being advertised to it, literally every second, what are they going to do? They're not going to bet a couple $100 here and there when they, that's the thing about it is that if you're going to say, all right, these guys can't gamble, then you have to tell them what the rules are. Jameson Williams wasn't, in my opinion, he got screwed, completely screwed. It's different for someone like Calvin Ridley, who was a vet, who actually bet on his own team. Now he bet on his own team to win. So it wasn't like he bet on his team to lose and did something for it. But again, you can't just treat everyone the same. You either got to educate them or you're going to have to let shit slide because you have owners that own pieces of gambling situations, right? Like the Miami owner, I forget his name. He owns something like 10 or 20% in a new casino venture. So like you have owners that own parts of this. Back in the day, you had many of the owners start up those gambling things. Like this is, 1900s type of stuff. The NFL has always had some form of gambling around them. It's just legitimate now. And if you want to make sure that no one is throwing a game, I get that. But you got to make the rules clear or you're just going to ruin people's careers for absolutely no reason.
Yeah. Crenshaw, so last week we had John Lopez and he said that the rules aren't really cut and dry, a lot of gray areas. So what's your thoughts on it?
talk to him, and once the team draft him and they sign their contract, they should talk to him. That's my take. But who do you think is the guy that lost $8 million though?
We don't know. That's the biggest surprise. Hopefully, it's nobody from the Texans.
Just take a wild guess who you think would do something like that.
I'm going to guess it's a QB because we haven't heard about him. They're protecting him, and someone that can obviously afford to lose $8 million a year. I'm going to say it's a QB. That's just my guess. And I'm not going to say he bet on the NFL or anything like that. Like, I think it's probably like something stupid, like a college game or something like that. But my guess is a quarterback.
Well, it's not under my I don't know for sure whether it's a Texans player or not. I don't think it is. But you look at for $8 million just purely on what the salary cap situation for the Texans are. There's only about 3 or 4 players making $8 million a year, so the list is pretty short. So I don't know if Tunsil's out there, gambling on the Giants or whoever. So I don't think it's a Texan.
It definitely was Russell Wilson. The way he played, it definitely was him.
Yeah, but you might be right on that one. All right. Well, DeAndre Hopkins, former Texan, he had a interview with the Titans and now with the Patriots. Brooks, what do you think? Do you see him signing with either team, or does he have a couple more stops?
A few hours ago, I saw that Doug Kaya, who covers the Patriots, he's reported that he thinks that the Patriots are going to get it done with DeAndre Hopkins, and I think that makes a lot of sense. They're a team that's on the verge, trying to stay in the running in the AFC East with the Bills continuing to be the powerhouse there, and they got to see what they have in Mac Jones, and they have some money to spend. Whenever I had my conversations with people about Hopkins and potentially the Texans, and I was told he was interested in the Texans, which answered a question to me about, a place that he had, been traded from and has a history with, and maybe that was a question, but they weren't a team that he was counting out. But their situation to clear money for him at this point, that's really the question, because whenever he was released was not a great situation in terms of free agency. You enter March, everybody's budgets are wide open. They haven't drafted anybody yet. So now it's the summer and you kind of have to create your own market, and you have to, your pool is a little bit limited. So in long story short, the Patriots are one of those teams that can make some room from what they have. They need some wide receivers. They need some offensive output. I think it makes a lot of sense for them. And Belichick and that offense has done this before with veteran wide receivers who have been proven to bring them in and supply their wide receiver core. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And Kaya's been really reliable as a reporter. So I think that's pretty trustworthy.
I mean, and obviously the whole thing of he won't go there because of Bill O'Brien, that kind of seems like false, huh? Kind of water under the bridge.
Well, in your situation, whenever you're looking for how you get
beggars can't be choosers, right?
If someone's willing to pay you money, then you see the opportunity. I mean, he played really well in it, so maybe bygones are bygones.
All right, Crenshaw, kick it off to you. What do you think? Is he going to be a Patriot?
Man, if he'd be a Patriot, it'd be like so shocking with the Bill O'Brien thing. But Mr. Aaron Wilson says there's no bad blood there. So, I would love him to stand in AFC. Because the more the better. I want more teams to beat the Browns. So I would love him to stand in AFC. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. But money talks, so maybe I do see it. So I think he will go to New England.
All right, BT.
I've been predicting that the Giants was a dark horse target for him because I think it makes a lot of sense. They're paying Daniel Jones over $40 million. They're paying him like a top 10 quarterback, and he doesn't have a single wide receiver one that's really elite. Hopkins would be that guy. But if he goes to the Patriots, I would understand it. You want to give Mike Jones something. You gave Mike Jones nothing last year. You didn't do much really in the. I'm sorry, Mac Jones. Let me call him Mike. But no, but you didn't really do much in terms of the draft either.
David Mills too, right? So
Yeah, David Mills and Mike Jones. So the whole thing is, I can see him there. Aaron Wilson did report and say that from his league sources that there isn't bad blood between Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins, which kind of puzzles me because I would think he has lots of bad blood against Bill O'Brien. But the bottom line is, if he can get a paycheck, I think you do it. I mean, I think this is going to be his last contract. And if he can get paid he's already getting paid quite a bit from the Cardinals right now. So if he can get and maximize and get something over $15 million, he's making bank. And at the end of the day, he's going to maximize his value. And I still think the Giants have a shot there if the Patriots don't take him on. But, we've heard that DeAndre Hopkins has had certain off-field issues, doesn't like to go to practices and stuff. Patriots are the ones that take risks. They took Antonio Brown. They're willing to take those risks on players that the league has decided that they don't want. So I can actually see DeAndre Hopkins going there. And if he does, I think he'll have a pretty damn good season.
All right. I agree. I think he might be Patriots because, it's kind of a prove-it year for him, right? He's on a down year slope. The PEDs didn't help him. So this is kind of, hey, I still got left in the tank. So I can see the Patriots being a good spot for him. Guys, well, let's get to the point while we're here. Some Houston Texans. Brooks, you're down there at OTAs in the minicamp. I'll ask the first question. Who's impressing you out there? Is it receivers, defensive backs, like a certain person? Who got your eye?
The person that caught my eye today and really the day before too, Derek Stingley. And I wrote a story about him last week in the Houston Chronicle about his fit in this defense. First off, you get on the field and sometimes over an offseason you just want to see kind of the eye test of body transformations. But Derek Stingley looks like he's made out of iron. He always has, but he looks even more like a Greek god. And he came out there today and he was in man coverage with Nico Collins going deep, and he got challenged and he leaped up with an impressive vertical and swatted the pass incomplete. I think the pass was about 40 yards. And that's the kind of matchup that Derek Stingley can do. He's very sticky as a cornerback. I covered him at LSU for his true freshman year where he was an All-American, his best year there, when I put him on the map. And his multiplicity, his versatility as a corner who can play man and zone and match up with anybody on the field. Those are the things that made him a number 3 overall pick. And watching him go through 2/3 of his time in zone coverage was pretty perplexing for that kind of pick. And talking to the coaching staff, Corey Undland, who's defensive passing game coordinator, came over with D'Amico Ryans, also talking to Matt Burke, Dino Vasso. All of them worked in the Eagles staff a couple of years ago, and they worked with a lot of pattern matching schemes, which basically are blending man and zone. It's something Nick Saban invented back in the early 90s, but it's become a lot more widely used in the last 10 years. And his fit in this Stingley's, they're saying this is exactly what can be played to his strengths. So seeing him on the field making plays like that are really encouraging for someone that only played about 9 games last year, and then and seeing him still make speed, leaping, all of that, he looked really good. But everybody wants to hear about the quarterbacks, right? CJ Stroud has had an up and down off season. He's made the best throws out of the quarterbacks. He's proficient in his precision. That's what made him a top candidate out of Ohio State. We've seen him made some really good throws. Yesterday, he threw about a 40-yard, 30-yard pass on a wheel route down the sideline for a touchdown, placed it right where it needed to be, right over the shoulder of a defender. And he's made some questionable passes. Today, there was some miscommunication between him and tight end Dalton Schultz in the flats, and Schultz stopped on the route and he overthrew him. It got picked off by Eric Murray for a pick 6. And he bounced back from that towards the end of the practice when they went on a 2-minute drill. Stroud was 6 of 8 passing, and then finished that up by placing a pass in the middle of the end zone and Schultz went up and brought it in for a touchdown. They went out and got Schultz for that reason. Seeing him be involved was also eye-opening. So we're talking about an offense that finished last in yards per drive the last 2 years, and had a lot of struggles trying to push the ball downfield. So just seeing anything that resembles that is going to stick out. So those are, I think, the two that you're really looking for. But there are other people. Jalen Petrie, he looked good at spots last year, and I think a lot of people look bad in that defense for faults that weren't exactly their own. And Petrie was having to make plays that he didn't really have to make because he led the Texans in tackles. Him and Jonathan Owens led the Texans in tackles. Everybody else in the NFL, it's a linebacker. So your front seven's not – you're having to fill in for a lot of bad spots. But Petrie comes in this year in this kind of secondary, the same kind of coverage that we're talking about, and he's made some great plays. Yesterday he swooped in and dislodged a pass from Nico Collins that was deep. Today he came in and laid a hit on him, and Collins was able to hang on, but Petrie's involved a lot. So those are the things that you want to see, the playmakers there. I can't really say much about the offensive line or defensive line just because this isn't live contact in the sense that, we're going to see Will Anderson Jr. go in and get sacks or tackles for losses. This is blow the whistle dead and such. So we'll get in. I'm really excited for training camp, and I'm really excited that they have 2 joint practices with both the Dolphins and the Saints. And we'll really see those players get tested. Christian Harris, too. I'm looking for him to jump up in this defense as well, and see C.J. Stroud go against some opposing defenses. I think that was a really smart thing by the Texans to bring that back. So those are kind of the big ones that jump out to me.
All right. BT, I'll let you ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I understand that you've been looking at, or actually in the article, you were talking about how Saban created this system where you had a combination of man and zone. And then you talked about all of the different coaching that actually attributes to that. I want to know if you could go, I know you wrote in the article, but if you could kind of elaborate on the whole thing between Saban and the coaching staff on why you think that's what DeMeco is going to put in place in the defense.
Yeah, well, I talked to Dino Basso about it, the cornerbacks coach with the Texans, and he was on that staff with Jim Schwartz in 2018, 2017, and he was there with Corey Unlin there, I believe, and Matt Burke was there for a year, and they did a lot of that whenever the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Talking to him, and then DeMeco Ryans, whenever he was in San Francisco, Unlin was there, and that's the kind of stuff that they were able to use. Jimmy Ward, whenever he came in, and we talked to him at first in free agency, he was talking a lot about how him and the cornerbacks would be able to work together. It's very supportive from one side to the other. I'm talking to Corey Unlin about this, and specifically to Stingley. It's like if you're in a play, and in the early 90s, it was kind of simple. It was like within the first 12, 14 yards, you're playing a zone, and then once they get to a certain spot, you buy or choose the man that would be placed in that situation. But over time, defensive minds have manipulated it, kind of like I was talking to somebody today relating it to offense about run-pass option schemes. You got to know who your keys are. You can talk about it in concept, but there's so many other ways that you could draw it up. It's all dependent on what are the options. Like, how do you split the field? Which is playing man, which is playing zone. Whenever the receiver enters a certain area, whose responsibility is where. Unlin said on a given play, Stingley can start here and end up in 12 different spots on the same play. Okay. And that's super important for all these defensive backs to be there now and to figure out, the combinations. All that Jimmy Ward already knows that. We haven't seen him in the last couple of days, and DeMeco Ryan says he's fine. So that's going to be a test to a lot of these defensive backs to be able to work in tandem with each other. And it's a lot different from a philosophy that Lovie Smith was working with, who In his, him and Tony Dungy back in the 90s invented Tampa 2. It's cover 2 situation. So that is a lot more dependent and giving the players the freedom to work and react to what they see. Now, that worked for a really long time. And I'm talking to some people about this as the years have gone on. You're getting offenses that can exploit that. They can trick the mind of defensive backs, make them make the wrong choices. And there's support that you can get and other ways to account for routes that are making you choose the wrong thing. And like, for example, against the Broncos, there was I think it was about a 30, 40-yard pass to Cortland Sutton in front of Derek Stingley. And there was a slot receiver that took a route all the way down the middle, bisected the safeties. Both of them got attracted to it, and nobody was there to help out Stingley down the left side of the sideline because he only had up to this much. There's nobody there. So they reacted to what they saw in the middle, and then, there's trouble there. I think Lovie Smith would argue that they need to be able to react to that, understand that, but sometimes you can support them in different ways. So it's different philosophies. This is what DeMeco Ryans favors. This is what we've seen work in different spots, and Stingley is recognizing this too. And it also involves the linebackers. I was talking to Christian Harris. We talked one-on-one together for a little bit yesterday, and he said it feels a lot like Alabama, and that makes sense because Saban invented what some of the concepts of which they're using. So that's a bit. That's kind of, hopefully that answers your question.
No, that definitely does. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, great insight. Cressall, what about you? You got a question for?
Well, yeah, basically what this guy said right here, that was going to be my question. You can see that on Brooks.
Is it the wide receivers interview making the DBs look good? That's what I'm scared of.
Look, that we were in training camp last year, right? And we had a lot of new players. We had a lot of new thoughts about the team. And then you start seeing players make plays and everybody gets excited. And then the season begins, and we all know what happened after. So there is a tendency whenever you see players make plays, whether you're wondering, okay, who is this on? So there's context to that, right? So Davis Mills threw a 44-yard pass, was caught by Alex Bachman in front of Jake Hansen. So you look into it and you're like, okay, well, Bachman's hasn't recorded an NFL reception yet. Does that mean he's not good? Does Jake Hansen's an undrafted free agent from last year? Does that mean that the pass is moot? These are questions that you have to consider. But I think this wide receiver core, if they're making plays against this secondary, we know what we know about Stingley and Petrie and Ward and Steven Nelson. I mean, if you look at what the 2021 defense did to 2022, I mean, the pass defense was pitiful in 21. They were giving up deep shots every right and left. It was part of the reason why they felt like they needed to draft Stingley and Petrie. And then last year, they were kind of a middle-of-the-road pass defense. So adding Jimmy Ward and the others that they've done, I think if they're getting yardage on this secondary and first team offense, then I think you can give them a little bit more credit for that right now. So there's definitely a lot of questions with the wide receivers if they're making plays. The secondary is making plays on them. So, yeah, I mean, you always have to take things with a grain of salt for sure.
All right.
Yeah, because Coach said today that he's not worried about the wide receiver core, but I think that was just Coach being Coach.
Yeah, they're never going to raise red flags on their own. So,
Right.
I mean, I asked DeMeco Ryans today, like, are you set with the roster? Are you going to be active in the summer? Is there any position group that you think you need to add? And they're not going to be specific about that. They're like, oh yeah, you know what? I need a wide receiver. I mean, we can look at it. Like, look, you've got Robert Woods, who's 31 and coming off his first full season after an ACL tear, and the rest of them are all under 27. Noah Brown last year was the first with 30%, first time he ever had 30% of offensive snaps, and he wasn't even the main wide receiver. Then you got Mechie, who hasn't been on the field, and you don't know you can't even set expectations for him. Collins, who's missed 10 games with injuries. Sims, Amari Rogers, Tank Dell, Jalen Camp. I'm just reading the names now. No, we don't know anything about these guys. So that's why DeAndre Hopkins made so much sense. And you would think over the summer, like they might explore that option. So it would not surprise me at all that come training camp that they'd make an addition there. But maybe they feel good about Woods and Collins and Brown and Mechie. So I think if they get the right opportunity, they're always looking. I know that. And I think that's the position group. If any of them out on the team that they would go and make a summer move, that would be the one.
Well, let me ask a quick twofer here. I'll kill two birds with one stone. We extended Malik Collins, and one of my theories is that by extending him, we obviously restructured because we gave him a signing bonus, right? We structured that, so we're clearing some cap space for this year. Do you think that one of the reasons that we did that is to free up cap space so we can add another player? And do you think that player could be a wide receiver not named Hopkins?
I think it's not a specific reason. I think whenever the personnel department makes decisions and makes salary moves, it gives them freedom while also extending a player that they want. So, I mean, you give someone, it gives you the opportunity, right? So they like Malik Collins a lot. And I think this is important because he's the first player. He was the first member, one of the first members of the complete rebuild, and now he's the first player to receive 2 contract extensions under Nick Caserio. So we were talking about core players the last couple of years, and then Brandon Cooks got a 2-year extension, and then 5 months later he's requesting for a trade. You don't give guaranteed money to players that you think are going to be gone. So this is about as close to a fully guaranteed contract that I can remember, 20 of 23 million. So you can space that around. We'll see exactly how that's spaced out. I haven't checked on that. But you whenever they make that decision, it does allow you the opportunity to do that. So I don't think they did it in mind, hey, we're going to sign Malik Collins and then give us the opportunity to go and sign someone else. I think it's both. You're like, okay. Well, you sign somebody and then you give yourself space, and that's just kind of part of any of the regular decision you make whenever you give someone guaranteed money and manipulate money around.
All right. Well, before we move to the next segment, I got a fan question for you real quick. Brooks, what is your Texans season prediction?
I believe I predicted 6 wins this year, and
that's fair.
It's a team that you have a lot of questions still, and I'm going to pull up the full schedule again right now just to look at it. But I could see a situation where they start off the year 0-4. I mean, this is a tough beginning where you have the Ravens first, the Colts, who have, I think, a little more proven star power on both defense and offense if they can get their running back and linebacker core together. And then the Jaguars are reigning AFC South champions and look like they're moving up under Doug Peterson. Then you have the Steelers, who are perpetually good. So you could be in a situation where you're 0-4 to start the season. But I think there are a lot of teams that are favorable. You like the Panthers, the Falcons, the Saints. Those are kind of middle teams. Well, the Panthers are in the same situation the Texans are a bit. And I think this is a team that could pull off the close wins that they had last year. Like, they were close with the Cowboys. They were close with the Browns. They were close with other teams.
The Chiefs, real surprise.
All of that. So I think there are some of these swing games that they're going to get. But, when the Bengals – and they play them, and then you just have some games where you're not expecting wins, but you have the Broncos and the games like that where the Cardinals, and you're like, okay, if they don't win some of these games that they're kind of on the same level as a team, you start to wonder where the development is. So I think this is a season where the last couple of years everybody's kind of been in protective dormancy as fans. I know that I'm from Houston. I have friends and family that haven't really paid attention. This is kind of a year where they've assembled a competitive team that's young. You don't know what you have really in C.J. Stroud. You've got some young guys like Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie that you're still finding questions about. You have a first-time offensive coordinator, first-time play caller in Bobby Slowick, and I mean, Gerard Johnson's had a lot of time in the high school circuit as a quarterback coach with the Elite 11 and obviously played himself, but this is the first time he's been a full-time quarterback coach. So how do they build their first system around players that are new to this? And then you have questions about the wide receiver core and how much points they can score. How much does this offense move? So I just don't see this being a situation where the Texans are in playoff contention immediately this year. And I think it'll still be really interesting. I think they'll be in games. I think they'll win some games that they shouldn't. And I think there's enough players with questions that they might lose games that they should. So I think 6 wins, 7 wins, that would be probably around the ballpark of realistic expectations, in my opinion.
That sounds fair. I mean, that's what we got going is about 6 wins. So, Brooks, we know you have a hot date coming up, so we won't keep you much longer. We got one little segment. It's a fan favorite, so we'll get kicking. All right, this is where we get to ask you a question, football, personal, So we don't answer it. Just say, hey, no, thank you. But we don't really go.
Oh, I can pass? All right.
Yeah, you can pass, but we're not those kind of people. Chris, okay. I'll kick off with you first. What do you think?
Okay, I got 3 questions. All right.
3.
I know, right? The first one, I'm gonna ask them, and then you answer them however you want to answer them. The first one, what's going to be UT record? The second one, we had a friend of the show, B. Scott on, and he went to Beaumont Enterprise. I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And lastly, what's up with you going on vacation by yourself?
Oh, okay. All right. First off, I just need – I'm in, like, believe it when I see it with the Texas Longhorns. Like, I graduated there in 2015. I got there after all of the 10-win seasons, and I saw Tyrone Swoops and David Ash and watching them barely cross the 50 against Arkansas at NRG Stadium. So I've seen them blow enough games for me to be like, okay, I just need to see it to believe it. So I'm gonna say 7, 8 wins, and that's the only thing I can really expect until I see them actually win. So I'm actually curious to see if Arch Manning actually gets in this year or if he's actually going to be patient. So I like watching the coverage over there, and I used to intern at the Statesman, so watching Kirk Bowles and Ced Golden Wright is always fun. So the second question about Brandon Scott, what do you want to know about our time at the Enterprise?
Yeah, I know, like, how was it, being there and everything, meeting him and,
Yeah, man. So I was a pup, coming in 21, 22 years old. So I had interned at Sports Illustrated for my last semester of college in New York. I was working with all these hot shots and thinking, you know what, I'm going to have a pretty sick job to start out of college. I'm going to, get to a big time city and work for a big time newspaper. And, then I end up in Beaumont, Texas, which is not. Go to the Beaumont Enterprise, which is an hour and a half from my home, and I was making less than $30,000 a year. I was living in a dump of an apartment. I was cooking jambalaya in a pot and eating that for the whole week. I'd make a huge pot, and I just eat that for the whole week, and that was the way I'd get through. I get 3 boxes of Slap Your Mama, put it into a pot and eat it for the whole week. And then I go in, and I'm still like trying to figure out my bearings. And this is a little bit of an insight on the newspaper business. I was offered a buyout on my 2nd or 3rd week of the job. They came in, they're like, hey, so we're having cutbacks, and we're offering buyouts to everyone. You can either accept it or be at risk of being laid off. I was like, well, how much do I get? So you get 2 weeks pay for every year you've been here. I'm like, so I get what, $20? You can go ahead and just, if you want to get rid of me, get rid of me. But I survived. And Brandon Scott was working, I believe, courts. He was a hard news reporter. And whenever I was learning from our editors and where they would place me, they would put me with Brandon and say, here's the things you learn. Like, it was a small enough shop. There was maybe 8 reporters in that whole room. We were asked to do everything. And mind you, this was also 2016. So during the presidential election at that time, I was asked to do a lot of things, covering sports, covering news, covering all that kind of stuff. And, Brandon, we'd all get stressed from our own situation. He would take his smoke breaks out the side. I'd join him out there, talk about where we're at. And I won't, he's got his own story to tell, but I always really appreciated what he did for me, because there's another reporter that sat next to him, Eric Besson, and they taught me a lot about the structure of writing. We don't have to get into it all, but like understanding why a story is written the way it is and what to look for. And Brandon told me something that still stuck with me, is that a question asked in earnest will be answered in earnest. And that's always stuck with me, because you're going to ask a lot of questions to some uncomfortable situations in some places that you don't feel like you're the person that should be asking that question. You could be in an environment where you don't feel comfortable, where you feel like this is like a topic that you're not maybe qualified to be around, but a question asked in earnest is going to be answered in earnest. So don't, do your research, go there and, be professional, and it'll be answered in kind. So that's something that's always stuck with me. And Brandon, I loved working with him, and to come back and, show up in Houston, and he had his own trajectory, came to Houston. I saw that. I was really happy for him. And now that we're like kind of not working together, but I saw actually he's writing now for Cron.com a bit. So we're tangentially coworkers again right now. But I mean, he's one of the most like brilliant thinkers of like, you listen to people ask questions during press conferences, and you can tell those have really thought out what they're going to ask and why it is they're asking. And Brandon's one of those people. So he's still, causing me to think of how I approach things. So really love Brandon. I think he's one of the best in this city. So to be back with him, I'm glad he was on this show too, because I'm sure he probably had a lot of great insight that even I could, that I wouldn't give you. So what was the third question?
Why you go on vacation by yourself?
Oh, well, it started off 2019. I was in Baton Rouge, and I always wanted to travel the world. I wanted to go to a place that I'd never been, and I couldn't get anybody to go. I was like asking somebody, and they're like, a week? I can't take a week off. And then they'd see how much it was, and they wouldn't be able to afford it, which is reasonable. I mean, like to get over the pond, it takes like $1,400, and I saved up for it. And here's my secret. I met somebody around Prague that told me if I got a credit card and like I got the bonus miles, like 100,000 points or whatever over the time, I could use that for my flights. So I've used credit cards over the time to pick up the points and then pay for the flight, and that's what I use it for. So I've kind of been strategic in that way. But yeah, that's kind of where it started. And I've got so many stories, man, just being alone and being forced to go talk to people. Okay, this is actually random, but I'm sitting here, so might as well. I'm sitting at my desk. So I bring a notebook on every trip. So these are my trips.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this is a notebook for every vacation I've taken, and I fill one up. This is from, which one's this? That's Croatia. This is Mexico City. So like, I just go out there, and you're forced to go talk to people if you want to. You can also like say, I don't want to talk to anybody. And, like there's situations where you can, I remember, so in France last year, I was 2 weeks in France, and like, there's nobody that tell me that this is a dumb idea, which maybe is not great too, because I was in East France, and I was walking between one city and another, and I just, stick my thumb out to see if that works. Here comes this guy. He stops, and he's like, "Hey, come on, get in." I'm like, "Oh, great." So he's taking me in, and he's going to a town called Colmar. And I'm like, "So what are you driving to Colmar for?" He's like, "Well, I was in the French army, and I'm going in for therapy now." And I was like, "Oh, okay, how that's cool. How stable are we in here? Like, is this is good? Like, and he's really friendly, and we get in. I mean, he was the best because he dropped me off and he says, "Do you have a way to get back?" I'm like, "No, I don't." And he's like, "I'll meet you here at 4:00." I didn't have my phone or whatever, so I came back around. I was there at 4:00, and I'm like looking around for this guy. I'm like, oh, he's not going to show up. So I start walking. It's going to be about an hour and a half walk back to where I'm going, and I'm on the highway, and I start hearing meep, 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 meep. I look, and he's there. He's like pulling the car over to the side. He's like, you. And he like comes over. He's like, I think he was in the Middle East or something. He's like, and he's kind of like broken French or whatever, speaking in English. He's like, I look. I look around. I look bad guys all over time in the army. I can't find you though. And I was like, you crazy guy, get in the car. He's getting in there. And so we're taking off. And I mean, I just have a blast going out and just meeting new people. And I mean, I've got loads of stories. So I think if I was with people,
you wouldn't be able to do stuff like that.
Maybe not.
Yeah,
I think it takes certain kinds of people. I slept on a park bench once in Chamonix because I had a place up in the mountains. I thought it was gonna be cool. You have to book those a year in advance, and I booked mine a week in advance, and I didn't know where it was. And I show up, and they're like, "I'm like, where is it?" They point to the top of the mountain. I was like, "Shit." I'm dressed like this, and the guy's like, "Hey, can you climb?" And I was like, "No." There's a hole in the side of the mountain, and people have like their sticks and their ropes coming through there. I was like, "There ain't no way I'm going through there." And so I go back down the mountain, and I'm in line. I have no idea what I'm going to do, and I meet this yoga instructor in line, and she's like, "Hey, you should join us doing yoga next to the mountain." I was like, hell yeah, let's go. So I go over there, and I think, oh, maybe I might have a place to stay, and then ends up not working out. And then I'm like walking around in this place that's really peaceful, and there's people in tents and whatnot. And I find a park bench, lie down, I'm tired, I fall asleep, and I wake up to the sound of sheep being let out by the shepherd, and they got these bells, and I just see this, the mountains and just everything. I'm like, holy cow.
What you?
So it's, I just love all of that. And then, so like you stay in hostels and stuff. When I was in Croatia, I was in a capital city, Zagreb, and I'm sitting in there and I'm meeting people. That's the best. You go in a hostel and you meet people from all over the world. You sit down and you learn. You start talking to people about their culture, their rationales, and they're asking you about your country, your beliefs. All of this. It's just a big melting pot, and you learn so much. And we would call each other by our countries because everybody forgets their names. I'm like, you're playing beer pong with, Germany versus Italy and whatever. And then we're like, what do we do? We go to like some random local, like, all right, what do we do tonight? And we're in Zagreb. This is right after the pandemic had about a year after it began. And the people locally in Zagreb had like partied at the center of the city, and they were still not big on crowds. And the cops would come in, kick them out, and then they would kick them out again. And then they would just kind of like move them out of the city until they're out in this park. So we were told, all right, it's Friday night. Just get on the train and follow the young people. And we're like, what? Get on the train, follow the young people. Okay. So we get on the train, and sure enough, there's a lot of people my age sitting on this train. We have no idea when to get off. We're on there for like 20, 30 minutes. Then everybody gets up. We were wondering if it was going to be like a clear sign. Everybody stands up, like, okay, let's get off. And like the train goes, and then it's just woods. Like, where the hell are we? Like, this is not a good idea. And they take off single file into the woods. I'm like, am I really going to follow? All right, let's do it. So we go in there, and the deeper we go in, you start hearing like some music, and there's like, doosh, 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 getting louder and louder and louder. And then the clearing hits, and the park is just covered with people, like thousands of people, like cars, lights, DJs, people selling beer, and it's just going nuts. And like, we lost a couple of people in the crowd, so we go back, and I wonder if I'm ever going to see them again because I'm leaving the next day or whatever. But we left at like 4 or 5 a.m. and the thing was still going. So I don't know, you just things that I would never do, and puts me out there in places where like I'm learning, this amount of stuff that like still applies to me personally. I've crafted my views. You know, I know who I am and what I stand for, and I like to be challenged. And you know, when I was in Scandinavia, my last night, and I know I'm going too long, and I'm going to have to apologize to this person, but last night, it's a story worth telling. Scandinavia is beautiful, just the outdoors, the mountains, everything. But nothing too crazy that week until the last night. I was walking back in Stockholm to my hostel, and I see this casino, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I lived in Louisiana. I know how to gamble. To call back to what we were talking about to begin with, and I go in, and I'm like, all right. So I bought some chips with my credit card. Sit down. I'm playing blackjack. I get down to $18, and it's 100 crowns and 100 crowns. 200 crowns is like $18, and it's a chip each. So I play 2 hands. I win. I double down. I win again. I double down again. I win again. I double down again. So I got like this stack, and I lose one, but I'd win the other, and then I'd replace the winnings with this one, and I just keep going. And they would stack them higher and higher like this. One of the towers actually fell down in the middle of a hand, and you know, they replaced it. And I was placing 2 max bets. I had the best night ever, and I hit blackjack on 1 max bet, and they brought this woman out to check my ID. They're like, "Can I see your passport?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Here you go." And they look at it, and they give me back my money, and I'm like counting all this cash. I'm like, how much money do I have? I don't know Swedish crowns. And once I converted the money, the guy asked me, like, "You still playing?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." You know, sweep it into my pocket, and I get out there, and I paid for the whole trip. So
Awesome.
that was amazing. So that was the wildest night of gambling in my life. But
Well, just don't get fined by the NFL.
Oh yeah. See, I can't go to any Swedish casinos if I played for the Texans. So, I mean, it's a long. I could talk forever. I'm actually looking up at a map that I scratch off every country I was in. I was in Brazil earlier this year on a mission trip. So, I mean, I just encourage so many people to go and figure out about themselves, and don't be afraid to go on your own if nobody's going to go with you. I mean, there are privileges I have. Like I'm aware of that, and so you gotta look at the situations for yourself and where you're going. So be smart about it, and I think you can see a lot and learn a lot.
See, Crystal, that's a perfect excuse for me and you to use to go on vacation by ourselves. Hey, look, we gotta explore. Okay, we can't have the wives, dragging us down. So we gotta go by ourselves. So our buddy Brooks gave us this advice. So y'all gotta stay at home. We'll be back. Right, Brooks?
That's right. That's right.
Let's go. I'm always down to leave, man.
Well, Brooks, we don't want to keep you waiting from your hot date. So you never know that this could be the one, tell the story at your wedding.
Who knows, right?
We were going to meet, but I was late because I was chit-chatting with some guys on the Texan podcast.
That's right.
So tell us where we can find your stuff at and where you're at on social media.
Yeah, HoustonChronicle.com. HoustonChronicle.com. That's where you can go. I think there's still a deal that you can get 6 months of coverage for 25 cents.
Oh, wow.
That is a deal that they are giving. I think my work is a little worth more than that, but that's the deal you can take advantage of. So I'll take it. And you can find me at B Kubena. That's it right there. BKUBENA. I mean, you subscribe to the Houston Chronicle. I love working for the paper I grew up reading. Got the privilege to work with John McClain for my first year, and working with Jonathan Alexander, both of us on the beat. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting topics coming up, but like it goes into other things. Jonathan Fagan, who's covered the Rockets for almost 30 years. He covered the Hakeem Olajuwon finals teams. I mean, he's one of the best sports writers, in my opinion. You get him too. You get all the coverage, and then you get news and local coverage in Houston. I know. I mean, you live in another state and some others, but readers, I mean, I think there's importance to understand what's around you too. But you get sports coverage, and you're not going to get anything more. We're going to have tons of coverage from the number of reporters we've got, and that's my sales pitch, and I'll stop. So.
All right. Thank you, Brooks. And Crenshaw, where can we find you?
You can find me at 5th Ward Crenshaw everywhere.
All right. And VT?
You can find me on Twitter at BrownChubbyBear. You can find my articles at fanbattlesports.com. And I'm having spaces usually with Leo about 3 to 4 times a week. So follow me and check us out. And if you want to argue some Texan football, I'm your guy, and I'm on Twitter Spaces a lot.
All right. You can find me at A1 Day One Texans, and you can find the podcast Texan Fan Battle everywhere. Make sure you check us out on the website, fanbattlesports.com. Like VT says, we have some great articles. Not as good as Brooks, but we're getting there. We're working our way, you know.
I'll produce work. That's good.
Right. Until then, guys, y'all have a wonderful day. And to all you fathers out there, enjoy your Sunday. That day is for you. We all know, especially me and Chris, we put the work in. So definitely enjoy it. Until then, guys, have a wonderful night. We'll see you then.
Peace. Happy Father's Day.
This is Crenshaw, Briggs, and VT. We want the touchdown. We not trying to go for 3.